Gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
What is going on, CaneSport? It is Izubee Charles, and good morning to you all. It is April 4th, 2023, and I would like to thank everyone for joining us on Good Morning CaneSport. Today, I'm joined by Stephen Wagner as we break down the news of the day. First up this morning, your Miami Hurricanes news. The football team returns to practice field this morning, and they're midway through spring practice. I know time is flying by, but stay tuned as we'll have plenty of video and content from today's practice and press conferences later this morning. While you're waiting on that, we have a ton of recruiting news from a busy weekend that Miami just had. But first, we take a look at next weekend, specifically on April 8th, when blue chip prospect Noland announces his commitment. Steven, he's fresh off a visit from Ohio State. What are you hearing about that visit, and where do you think Miami stands with Noland?
Yeah, apparently that visit to Ohio State really shook some things up. We knew that he had been wanting to land this Ohio State offer for some time, and apparently Ohio State has been recruiting him like a kid who already had an offer for quite some time. You've seen what Ryan Day has done with Justin Fields and CJ Stroud as back-to-back quarterbacks, and how impressive he's been there, making Justin Fields a first-round draft pick, and now it looks like CJ Stroud is going to have a chance to go either number 1 or number 2 overall. That's certainly going to be difficult for Miami to beat out, but definitely not impossible. Miami's a school that's remained high on his radar pretty much this entire time. They're a school that hasn't given up either. Mario Cristobal has been in contact with Noland, pretty much daily. I remember his mom told me a couple weeks ago that she thinks he talks to Mario Cristobal as much as he talks to her. So Miami's certainly not letting up on that front. Definitely feels like Clemson is another school to watch. But apparently now that he has that Ohio State offer, things are starting to maybe feel a little bit different. And Ohio State's quarterback situation is kind of interesting too, because originally, if you'll remember, they actually had Dylan Raiola, the number 1 overall quarterback in the class. They had him committed back a couple of months ago. All of a sudden, Raiola decommits, and now it's seeming like Georgia, USC, or Nebraska are going to be one of the 3 schools to land him. And Ohio State is all of a sudden sitting here without a quarterback, kind of scratching their heads and going, man, we need to figure out who that guy is going to be for us. And it seems like they may have that Noland may be that guy. He's certainly someone who Ohio State definitely has interest in. We do know that he is the number 1, or we at least very heavily can infer that he is the top target for Miami in this year's recruiting class as far as quarterbacks go. We've got some other names like Luke Moga, Michael Van Buren, Maliki Smith. Those are some guys who we've definitely heard a lot about, but none as much as Noland. It feels like we've been saying, Noland this, Noland that, really since the start of 2023, whenever we shifted our focus from the 23 cycle over to the 24 cycle, and for good reason. I mean, he's obviously an extremely talented quarterback, but Ohio State, I think, is going to be a really serious threat, kind of the way that it feels over here. It definitely feels like there's been a little bit of a shift in momentum, because it seemed like a big part of Miami's kind of recruiting strategy was going to be, hey, let's get him down here for this unofficial visit in late March, and then let's find a way to keep that enthusiasm from that visit. Let's keep him psyched. Let's keep him hyped up about that. And all of a sudden, now Miami has to figure out, okay, how are we going to, how far can our recruiting visit enthusiasm really carry us whenever all of a sudden Noland is getting an offer from a program and from a head coach that is going to have back-to-back first-round draft picks and that has had probably the most prolific offense in the country really since Ryan Day took over as head coach back in 2019. So certainly this feels like it is very substantial news in the Aaron Noland commitment, but I've said this in a story as well. I don't think that his commitment on April 8th, no matter who he commits to, I don't think that's going to be the end of his recruitment by a long shot. I would be shocked if this really dissuades any program from going after him. I would still expect all these programs to really, really push for him. The last time that I talked to his mother after that unofficial visit that he took here in late March, his mother told me we can't wait to get back for the official visit. Now, I haven't heard if a date has been set in stone or anything like that, but we at least know that Air likes Miami enough that he's willing to consider that official visit. And so if he does end up taking that Miami official visit, which I personally, just my thoughts, I think he probably will. I think that at least keeps Miami in the running to be able to get this guy. And I would expect his recruitment to go all the way up until signing day when he finally puts pen to paper.
Thank you for that, Stephen. To kind of sticking with Aaron Noland, just how big of a commitment do you think that would be for the University of Miami, that 2024 class? I know Miami only has one guy committed so far, Abram Murray, 2024 kicker. Last year, this time, Miami had Antonio Tripp, the Washington brothers. So it's kind of calm right now for that Miami 2024 class. Just how big would that be if Aaron Noland says, hey, I'm a Hurricane, I'm committed to the U on Saturday? How big would that be for the Hurricanes?
I mean, there's no denying how substantial that would be, especially now that we are in an era of football where everything revolves around the quarterback. I mean, it's not impossible to win if you don't have a quarterback, but if you don't have like a Georgia-esque roster, surrounding you, and you don't have, that level of defense on the other side of the ball, it's pretty freaking hard to win without a quarterback. I mean, you look at all the programs that have had success this year, taking Georgia kind of out of the equation just because Georgia's kind of the school that really ruins every analogy that you want. They're that level of outsider. TCU had a great season. What was their biggest key quarterback play? Max Duggan's right there in Heisman contention. USC goes from a tire fire to playing in a New Year's Six Bowl overnight. What do they have? They've got a Heisman winning quarterback in Caleb Williams. Michigan, what really took Michigan over the top this year, it was the play of J.J. McCarthy. He was that guy that kind of gave them that next level of explosiveness, and the list just goes on and on from there. So there's no denying, the importance of Aaron Noland just as a player more generally. And you look up his highlight reel, and he is hyper efficient. He threw for like 50-something touchdowns last year in Georgia, smashed all kinds of state records. You watch his film. He's a really good pocket passer who kind of has the feel for when he needs to use his legs, when he really needs to run. He kind of knows how to protect himself. He really is what you want in a quarterback. So in terms of the actual position value, I don't think there's any denying that level of importance. And not to mention, whenever we see a quarterback commit, there's usually kind of a train of players who follow the quarterback as soon as they see him commit. That's usually kind of the signal to the rest of the kids in that class, hey guys, come with me. We've seen this in a lot of places. We saw it at USC last year. I don't think USC gets Jordan Addison without Caleb Williams going into the transfer portal over there. We saw something kind of similar at Texas last year whenever Arch Manning committed, and right after that, they got 5-star wide receiver Jonte Cook. We saw it at Michigan last year with J.J. McCarthy bringing in some talent with him. We've seen this at a lot of different programs, and I definitely think that it would be kind of a signal to the rest of the recruiting class this year if Aaron Noland were to commit. I mean, keep in mind, Aaron Noland's on the South Florida Express 7-on-7 team. That's the same team as Jeremiah Smith and Josiah Trader and Chance Robinson and all of these really talented kids in the 2024 class that Miami's really pushing hard after. I mean, we know Jeremiah Smith, Josiah Trader, Chance Robinson. Those are probably three of the biggest receiving targets on Miami's board, if not just recruiting targets on Miami's board. So I definitely think he would be substantially important. I kind of think that as far as the overall idea of maintaining the South Florida pipeline, or in this case, I guess establishing the South Florida pipeline for Mario Cristobal and kind of what he's trying to do with recreating the state of the U, I would probably say that Jeremiah Smith is kind of the most important target in that regard. Just in the sense that you really don't want an elite talent that's within an hour's drive from campus going all the way to Ohio State when he can just stay in his backyard. From Cristobal's standpoint, hopefully help you win a championship there. We know Miami's in pretty good shape with Josiah Trader and Chance Robinson and kind of the way things are shaking out there. So in terms of overall position value, I'd probably say that Aaron Noland's the most important player in that regard, just because of the simple fact that he plays quarterback. And right now, quarterback is the most valuable position on a football field for really any team in America at any level, except, I don't know, maybe Pop Warner football. But in terms of, the actual value to the university and in terms of trying to reestablish that recruiting pipeline and the value to South Florida, I'd probably say it's Jeremiah Smith, but certainly there's no denying how massively important Aaron Noland is in this class.
So April 8th is shaping up to be a big day for the University of Miami Hurricanes football program. So Canes fans, keep your phones notified. Turn to Aaron Noland's Twitter notifications, Instagram notifications to see if the Canes get the quarterback of that 2024 class. Now we rewind a little bit back to this past week when Miami hosted a plethora of elite talent, starting off with Fort Lauderdale St. Thomas Aquinas four-star running back Jordan Lyle, who took his first unofficial visit to the University of Miami. I had the chance to speak with Jordan Lyle. He said something that really, really caught my attention. I'm going to read a direct quote from the story that we have up this morning. Lyle said, "To be honest, I've heard people talk bad about Miami and stuff like that. But now that I've come here, I have a completely different outlook. Forget what other people are saying. This is a great program." And when a prospect tells you that directly to your face, it's kind of like, wow, I wonder what, people are saying about Miami when, they're not around the coaches and not around the program. So just hearing that from a South Florida guy saying, hey, guys, come out and check Miami. This is completely different. What I thought is a huge step for Miami. I feel like with establishing that South Florida connection Stephen kind of talked about, kind of change the perception, the way kids look at the University of Miami. And Jordan Lyle is a very, very good running back. I believe in the On 300 2024 rankings, he's a 53rd overall prospect in that 2024 class. And I believe the third or fourth running back, 1,000-yard rusher last year at St. Thomas Aquinas, 12 touchdowns, helped them to their fourth consecutive state title. And he talked about Coach Tim Harris and Coach Benedict Hippolyte, the running back coach in offensive analysis. And he said, hey, these guys really impressed me my first trip at Miami, and I definitely will consider coming back. He also told me that he will put Miami in his top 10 list along schools like Georgia, Ohio State, and Alabama. So a lot of blue bloods are chasing the signature of Jordan Lyle. So make sure to check out that update with the 2024 running back out of St. Thomas Aquinas. Next up, we also have an update with Washington, Oklahoma 2025 tight end Nate Roberts. Nate Roberts is a name to know on that 2024 cycle, is picking up steam. Steven, you talk with Nate Robinson. Not Nate Robinson, that's the basketball player. Nate Roberts. What is your impressions of the Oklahoma native?
Yeah, Nate's a guy whose stock is rising really, really quickly in that 2025 cycle. He's now got more than a dozen offers. Miami's a school that's offered him now, along with Alabama, Georgia, Notre Dame, a lot of these really big, prominent blue blood programs. Really big physical kid. I think personally, really good receiving skills as a tight end. I think he's really good standing up in the slot. He's also really physical. I think there's a couple things they needs to work on, but I do think that he's a guy who's definitely going to get a lot of attention in the 2025 class. He's not ranked currently. I would expect that to change at some point as the class goes on, or as the cycle goes on, But there are a lot of programs that have real interest in him. Oklahoma being his home state's flagship institution. Right now, they are the front runner for him, according to the recruiting prediction machine. And that kind of feels about right right now, especially with the success that Oklahoma has had with tight ends in recent years. You think of guys like Mark Andrews as kind of the first name to really pop up. Now, of course, a lot of that was based off of Lincoln Riley being there, and now Brent Venables is there at Oklahoma. But Brent Venables has recruited really well for the Sooners, even despite having a losing season last year. But he's definitely got interest in Miami too. He knows the history that Miami has had with their tight ends, going back to guys like Greg Olson, especially, and Jeremy Shockey, those guys who really did pop for the Canes. He really has a level of interest in Miami. He's interested in coming down to Coral Gables at some point. He's thinking maybe either late May or sometime this summer, if he can go ahead and work that out. Now, it's kind of important to note right now, he really hasn't had very much contact with Canes coaching staff. In fact, Stephen Field, who is now an off-field assistant, Stephen Field reaching out to him, or I should say reaching out to his coach, who then was able to put them in touch. That was the first contact and interaction that he's been able to have with Miami staff. So there's certainly some work to do there. But I think I definitely feel a lot different if he was able to get down here for a visit.
Thank you for that, Stephen, as well. Jumping back to the 2024 class, a visitor that came to Miami this past week was 2024 four-star defensive back Jamari Howard. Jamari Howard is a South Florida native that attends Westland Hialeah in Miami, but he's committed to Michigan State since September of 2022. I had the chance to talk to Jamari Howard about the whole recruitment process. Why is he still opening things up? Is Miami a school he's really considering? And what he told me is when I stepped on campus at Miami, it felt like home. I had the chance to speak with Jamari before he had interest from Miami. And one thing he was always telling me is, hey, I really want Miami to offer me. I really want Miami to show interest. That's the hometown team. I would love to stay home and play for Miami. I was kind of surprised when he committed to Michigan State, but like almost every recruit in 2024, 2025, 2026, a verbal commitment pretty much is nothing now, as he is still openly, letting other schools talk to him, talking to other schools, going on visits. And I feel like with him, he's a very, very talented kid that Miami's high on now that they weren't too high on before. And he said that does have a little bit of an effect on his recruitment, how he thinks of Miami, but not too much since they're kind of rebuilding that and bring him into the building, making him feel like a priority. He mentioned Benedict Hippolyte, former running back analysis at the University of Florida back in Miami, is a big, big reason why he's really considering the Canes. So make sure to check out that update with Jamari Howard, 2024 four-star Michigan State commit that was at Miami this past week. To wrap up our recruiting stories this morning, Steven, our country boy out of Mississippi, Caleb Cunningham, one of the top prospects, wideouts in that 2025 class. Just what were your impressions on him? And another thing I want to ask you, a 2025 kid, just how important is that for Miami to already kind of build those roots, get those guys on campus, and establish a relationship with them?
Normally I wouldn't say that it is absolutely hyper important or essential the way that obviously the 2024 class is right now, with 2024 right here in front of us. But with a kid like Caleb Cunningham, I personally think his comp right now is Jeremiah Smith. I think he's going to be a Jeremiah Smith type of guy by the time that the 2025 class really rolls around and it's right here in front of us. I mean, you look at this kid's tape. First off, he's just an incredible receiver, period. But you get to be around this guy. You get to see him in person. He's 6'3", 185 pounds. And the first thought that you have is he's not done growing, like not by a long shot. He is going to be absolutely physically massive by the time that he actually rolls around. You see him on film. He's a really good deep threat. I think he would test extremely well at a combine, good vertical, soft hands, good speed. Definitely got a few things that he needs to work on, but keep in mind, this kid's also only a high school sophomore. He's 15, 16 years old, and he's a kid where I think the ceiling is the roof for this guy. I mean, my goodness. He also has very real interest in Miami. And I'll be honest, that really kind of surprised me, him being a guy out of Mississippi who right now some of the leaders on the RPM are Ole Miss and Mississippi State, which is kind of what you would expect in that regard. I think he's a guy who could eventually maybe even be an A.J. Brown type of dude, depending on if he keeps growing, because you look at him physically and he kind of has that type of build where you can look at him and say, man, he has the chance to really keep stacking on muscle. He's the guy who can keep on putting that really good weight. It wouldn't surprise me if this kid ends up being, like 205 or even 210 and 6'4", 6'5" by the time that he's a freshman. I think he really is that type of elite talent. Or elite body, excuse me. But in addition to being an elite talent, he's the number 10 overall kid in the 2025 class, number 2 overall receiver. Really likes Miami a lot. He's a big believer in Miami's coaching staff too. He really thinks that right now Miami kind of has that staff that's going to be able to put things together and is going to be able to win quickly. This is already his 3rd trip down to Miami. He's probably going to take another visit to Miami at some point over the summer. He really likes Coral Gables. He wants to return again and keep kind of hanging around the program. So I think he should definitely be viewed as kind of a pleasant surprise for having this amount of interest in Miami already. I think that he's someone who Miami is going to need to make sure they keep on their radar. And I expect him fully to be a guy who Miami is making kind of that full court press for by the time 2025 rolls around, simply because I don't see how you can have a top 10 recruit in the country really like Miami this much to consistently want to come down and visit the Canes and not be willing to put in that kind of effort on your end. So right now, that's definitely going to be one to watch. Caleb Cunningham, 2025 receiver. I think he is going to have a spectacular junior season. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he ends up being a Jeremiah Smith type of recruit by the time 2025 rolls around. I definitely like this kid a lot, and he's definitely someone that you can keep your eyes on. He also told me Miami is in his group of really top schools, so I think there's a lot of reasons for Miami fans to kind of put a circle around Caleb Cunningham's name if you kind of want to look at if you kind of want to be precocious and look at that way too early list for 2025 kids.
Yeah, I always love when I see those way too early lists because, just yesterday I was covering 2024 kids. It's like, man, these kids have a while till their time is up, and now it's here right in front of us. So always look out for those 2025 kids, the stars of tomorrow. And, Caleb Cunningham looks like he's going to be one of those guys. So make sure you check out all of our recruiting updates on the site this morning. And as always, stay tuned for any news that may come up on the site as well. That is all that we have for this episode of Good Morning CaneSport. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us to kick off your day, and I hope you enjoyed. If you liked today's video, please leave a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel and CaneSport.com if you already have not. For Stephen Wagner, I'm Izubee Charles. Thank you for joining us this morning, and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye now.